how did you, or how or why did you pick biblical? And then, like with the history and stuff, kind of bringing it together. And what's funny is, way back in the '80s, when D&D came out, it was that, I mean, the whole thing between the churchgoers and the D&D, and
Oh,
that was
yeah,
a
satanic
huge.
panic. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. Okay.
So how did you
So,
marry
uh,
the two? You're
well,
outside the box thinking, I know.
yeah. So, even way before this happened, my nephew once lived with us. Um, and he'd gotten into all this stuff because really me. And he got into Dungeons and Dragons, got into Society of Creative Anachronism, and we realized that role playing could be an amazing tool for school. So we started to incorporate that with Sam's school. And and then so it kind of grew from there. But the reason why Bible is because, as I mentioned, I used to work for the Navigators, and I wholeheartedly believe in their mission. Oh my gosh, I wholeheartedly believe in their mission to know Christ and to make him known. That I consider myself an ambassador for Christ, and I want children, kids, to understand that God loves them and he died for them and that he's there for them. Because here's the real deal. When I was a teenager, and this will answer your other question too, I didn't have anybody helping me. I was I was lost in the 80s, typical 80s craziness. The drinking and all of that.
Okay.
And I had turned my back on God. And so but I had suicidal thoughts and I had nobody to help me. Nobody. And so it was only God that brought me through that. And so if I can be there for one kid, then, and I'm getting chills,
I
it
am
was worth
too.
it. Yeah, it was so worth it. It is so worth it because, I, and that's the thing too that my nephew and I kept talking about when we started this. The suicide rate in this town is so high, and it only got worse after the pandemic. So that is one of the reasons why I am so committed to this, and why, you know, who I am is a person who God saved through a lot of turmoil and darkness. And it would be selfish of me not to share that in a very loving, respectful way. So that is why I do what I do. Now, in terms of the satanic panic, so I did not grow up in the church really. And I wasn't aware of that when we did Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't really know anything about that. And I had let the whole fantasy side of me go for a long time. And then I don't remember when I started getting reconnected with it, probably around the same time my nephew and I started talking about role playing. But what I came to realize is that any tool, any Dungeons and Dragons is just a tool. And anybody can do anything with it, positive or bad. It really depends on who is running it. And so, yes, there are those Christians who will be like, oh, there's magic spells. They won't even read Narnia
Right.
because it's, or Tolkien.
Right, right.
And those aren't the people we're trying to reach. Fine, believe what you want to believe, go ahead. But they're not who we're trying to reach. That's fine. But I mean, Tolkien himself was a Christian. C.S. Lewis was a Christian. So, there is that element in there already. And I believe that, the Apostle Paul said, to reach people, if you reach the Romans, you become a Roman. So why not use this tool for good? And that's how we came to think about it. And then again, we thought, wow, this is a really powerful way to teach school. And history is a passion that I have, that my son has. So, it was the natural way to do that because we're just so passionate about history. Sam will, I mean, he's probably one of the very few kids that knows about Prussia. I don't even know much about
Right.
Prussia. He knows about styles that people wore in medieval times. I mean, he just he knows all this stuff. So
Right.
we thought let's use it all.
Right.
So that's kind of how we came to that. Yeah, I mean, satanic panic thing. That
It is. So is there a particular group that you are trying to reach? Um, or is it just anybody who doesn't fit in, come on in?
pretty much, yeah. It's again within that 11 through 17, although we would love to get an adult group going, but we just haven't had the time for that. But yeah, pretty much 11 through 17, mostly homeschoolers, but doesn't have to be,
But what
and
about so it doesn't have to be a certain faith or even have
no,
a faith. It
mm,
doesn't have, okay.
no, we just ask that they read our statement of faith and that they don't have to agree to it, but we'd like them to respect it.
Okay. Makes
That's
sense.
pretty much where and we have certain code of conduct rules that the kids need to follow. Like we don't allow bullying, we don't allow name calling, all that stuff. So we are a wholesome, family oriented club. And if it fits within that, and if they can respect what we believe, and they can respectfully listen through a devotional, because really anybody can learn anything from anything, you
Right.
know? So I try to relate it to the kids and bring them in and, talk about like say you're into martial arts, like one of my kids is, well, what's it like for you are you afraid sometimes when you're facing an opponent? And what do you do when you're afraid? And, I try to give them life skills
Right.
through those lessons because there's so many life lessons that are in those scriptures. And it can apply to anyone really because they're universal and the Bible is the bestseller of history. So,
Right, right. And
yeah.
and the word devotional in general, that could mean anything. That doesn't have to be biblical. That doesn't have to be, a devotional could be something, your own mantra um, and quiet time and going through something. It doesn't always have to be religious, a connotation for a religious. It's something spiritual, whatever that means to you.
Yeah, they can glean anything